Welcome to the Spiritually Embodied Leader podcast. I'm Cynthia Gutierrez, the creator of Embodied Freedom, and I love to help conscious, heart-centered, spirit-led entrepreneurs learn how to regulate their nervous system and move through an embodied transformation so they can start and grow their online business with confidence, authenticity, and aliveness for more meaningful income and a deeper impact. On this podcast, we're going to be talking about how embodiment, mindset, subconscious mind, cyclical living, returning to nature, ritual, and ceremony can all play a powerful role in revolutionizing you and your business from the inside out. Now let's get into it.
This particular episode is a unique one because I am in the car driving. Yes, I got some headphones in. Both of my hands are on the steering wheel. I'm driving safely, and I am on the way to BBD Live, which is a live business conference happening out of Business by Design program by James Wedmore that I had joined in 2019, but I did not redeem my free ticket to this event until last year in 2023. And it blew me away. Freaking just unbelievable breakthroughs and experiences that I just can't miss. You know what I mean? I'm like, I will do anything it takes to come back. And yeah, it was quite an experience receiving all of the support in order for me to be here today. And it's just such a blessing. I'm so grateful for even taking the time to record this podcast, because this breakthrough that I'm about to share actually happened on pre-registration day, like early check-in the day before day one of the program. And already something just massive unfolded. And I have a feeling that others may be going through the similar experience, and may you hear yourself in my story. And I really want to share how I overcame it. And that's what this whole entrepreneurial journey is about, right? Overcoming those moments where you're just like, fuck, like, I don't feel good. This is bringing up a whole lot of insecurity, and it's so uncomfortable. Like, I just want to hide in my shell and not come out. But there are ways, there is another way to be able to rise to the occasion, get yourself through it, and come back better than ever, you know, or just come back with a softened heart. And even if you're still feeling the fear, you get to do it anyway. And yeah, it's just so interesting to do this podcast because at the event, James Wedmore loves to give gifts. And of course, he's like, look, I want to give you these cool kick-ass things, but you got to do something for me. And not just for me, but for yourself, for the people that need your help, right? And so he's like, look, write down this hairy, scary thing that you don't want to do, or the thing that you've been putting off because, oh, it's not the right time. Oh, I need this. Oh, you know, if only I prepared myself better for that. Like, he's just like, you know what? Just cut the bullshit and do it. And once you write it down, put your name on it, you're going to put it in a fishbowl after it's done, and he will pick a name out of the fishbowl and win a prize. But the thing is, it's not even about the prize. You know what I mean? This is really about just allowing things to be sloppy, allowing things to get messy, and to just do the thing that you know you're meant to do, but you've been keeping your power away to these circumstances. Right? To like this podcast. I didn't bring my equipment. I didn't bring my professional mic. Usually I do a video podcast, and excuse me for not having a video on today, but you know what? Right now the video isn't all that important. You know what I mean? And so when I showed up on early registration, the Wednesday before even the whole event begins, like, after driving for 6 hours and taking my daughter to school and getting I actually woke up that day at 2:30 in the morning. I was packing my bags and getting ready at 3:30 in the morning. And like, it just was a really long day. And I walk into the hotel in my sweatpants with no bra. Like, it's just like, oh my God, I fucking made it. And even I was having car problems on the way up. I mean, it wasn't like a full-blown problem, but like certain lights came on, and like one of the oil lights came on, and that's like a really big deal, right? I was a little worried, but by the grace of God, I fucking made it. And I walk in, I grab my badge with my name on it, And I see James Wedmore there. I see Mel Abraham. I see Brandon Lucero, right? And I'm just like, oh my God. I see faces from last year and coaches that I only see on the coaching calls inside of BBD that have inspired me so much. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, I can't wait for everything that's about to go down. And I start reflecting on this full circle moment of what things were like last year. And I was just like, wow, like so much has changed and so much has not changed at the same time. And as I was reflecting on last year's event, I remembered how elated and how like I'm on the fucking top of the mountain here. I'm on the top of the world. Like I'm so ready for this. Everything's going to be different. And I was so ready to really change my life. And even though certain things in my life has certainly changed, and I was walking into the event this year in a completely different state of being, there are also certain things that did not change. And honestly, I'm in even more of a vulnerably financial position in my life than I was last year. And when I realized that, this heaviness just sunk into my body. And I was like, fuck, like, even though so much has changed and I was really pushed to my limits this year, like, I didn't make the certain financial breakthroughs that I wanted. I thought I was going to do X, Y, and Z, and I did it. And I was just like, damn, like, fuck, like, I wanted to say I'm feeling so sad, but I'm like, this isn't sadness. Like, what is this feeling? And I realized that I was so disappointed in myself. And I was like, oh my God, like, that sucks. I don't really know how else to put it. Like, oh, like, this does not feel good to be disappointed in myself. But in my heart, I'm just like, oh, but Cynthia, you've grown so much, right? I'm like, but I keep doing that every year. I grow so much internally, that inner game, the soft skills, right? Like, as my identity has grown and evolved so much, like, why isn't this showing up in my business financially? And of course, there are so many explanations that I can give that's pretty freaking simple that I'm like, well, you know, I didn't do this and I didn't do that. And I put this other thing on top priority, right? Like, for example, a lead magnet that, well, I was creating it in a way that is so much more that I'm like, damn, like, I should really be charging money for this. But it's like I put other things as a top priority. And of course, it led me to not making an income. And it's still even uncomfortable to say this now because it's like a whole 365 days has passed and I just didn't do the thing that I really wanted to do. And that really stuck with me, even when I went to my hotel room. And even though I thanked myself for taking that moment to just be honest and real and transparent with myself, being like, yeah, this is straight up disappointment. Like, I'm feeling like such a fucking failure. And I was like, okay, like, even though I was doing my best to be compassionate with myself, you know, and trying to hold myself in so much love and forgiveness, I was still walking around with a heavy heart, you know, and I went to the crystal shop. I said, what's up to Clay? And like, I was like meeting certain people and I was like, oh yeah, I'm here. And I'm like, I know I'm tired and all, but it was that heaviness, that disappointment that really brought down my frequency. And eventually I went to my hotel room, I checked in, I unpacked, and I was so wiped out. I'm like, you know what? I really want to journal about this disappointment, right? I even leaned in on my best friend, Sarita, and I sent her an audio message, just pouring out in my heart, just being like, yo, like, what the fuck? And I was just so exhausted. I went straight to bed. Yeah, I woke up the next morning really early, and I could still feel that heaviness, that pit in my stomach. And immediately I saw in my vision the tapping solution app. It's a emotional freedom technique app that I love to use. And I was like, oh yeah, like, you know what? Even though, yes, it's so powerful to hold yourself in compassion and tap into that self-love, the thing is, sometimes that could also be bypassing the work that you're meant to do, right? And so I took the time, I did 3 rounds of tapping on disappointment. And I realized that, look, disappointment is a natural part of life, right? You go for a goal, you try to do the thing, and you fall short. And yeah, it's like, man, I wanted better for myself, and that's natural. But the thing is, sometimes we put ourselves down about it for too long, right? Like the heaviness just really makes us shrink down. And maybe some of it might have been self-sabotage. Maybe you showed up and it was just like, oh, I really fucked that up. And of course I didn't make it. Or maybe you felt like you didn't practice enough. You didn't practice in the quote unquote right way. And so it didn't pan out. For whatever reason, it just didn't happen. And it's okay to feel a disappointment. But the thing is, we can't let it drag us down to the ground to the point where we can't get back up. It's the falling on our face and just curling up in a fetal position and not getting back up. That's the problem. That's where we really need to take care of the disappointment so that we can be able to breathe, feel our feelings so that it can pass through and we're able to get back up again. Because the thing is, in entrepreneurship, failure is inevitable. You have to learn how to fail. You have to learn what doesn't work in order to get to what does. Failure is the pathway to success. And because failure is inevitable, your success is also inevitable. It's the learning how to fall in order to be able to get back up. Sometimes we fall and we hurt ourselves so much in the fall, and it's okay. We're like, oh man, like, all right, like if I don't learn how to like roll with gravity, quite literally, I've learned this in dance and in all my years of dancing, especially in university, actually in my dance classes, they taught me how to roll with gravity, where if I fall, I know how to roll within my joints and continue that momentum of force that my body weight is moving into the ground, and I roll my body and my joints and my limbs around. So then I either just, roll into the floor and not make that direct impact, right? That force into that hardwood floor. I roll into it and I slow down. Or I roll into the ground and I find that momentum and I start spiraling back up. And that's what entrepreneurship is about. It's, yes, you fall on your face sometimes and they're like, fuck, okay, like take care of the bruising, of the harshness, of the heartbreak, of those emotions of like, fuck, I'm so afraid of being judged. Like, what if so-and-so sees me? What are they going to think of me, right? Sometimes we have to go through those emotions and process them. And then sometimes it's like, okay, like I've processed this, I've done some work. Now, how do I like roll with the punches, right? And sometimes it's just that like, okay, the resilience, okay, do it again. Okay, do it again. And then it gets to a point where you're just like, oh, actually, this is such an interesting dance. How do I make the fall a part of the dance? How do I roll with the punches and then find that unique way to get my hit in? It's like, oh, block, block, boom, boom. But how do I come back with a bang? So when I was doing the emotional freedom technique, I really had to feel in that disappointment, and it brought me back. It led me back into early memories of my childhood, of when I saw myself in a special education, like preschool, essentially a kindergarten school, because I did not speak as a young child. I didn't talk. And I spoke so little that my family members truly thought I was mentally disabled. They thought I was retarded. And excuse me if that word is triggering, but that's literally how I saw myself. And I went to a special education preschool, and there was definitely other disabled people in the classroom and that were in wheelchairs that needed full assistance in order to survive and live and be cleaned up after defecating and this and that. And I worked with a speech therapist, and I saw myself in that room and realizing like, oh my God, like, this is who I am. And I felt the disappointment. That's where the root of it came into my life, at the earliest memories of my life. And it was that disappointment of like, I'm never going to amount to anything because look at these other people that can't do things for themselves. And I assumed that I am not able to do anything for myself. And I needed help. I needed this other person, this other woman to teach me how to even speak. And that was just one thing. But throughout my whole life, because I held on to that disappointment and I didn't know how to process it, right? It's compounded over my life, where other moments of disappointment then got layered on top and layered on top and layered on top. Then all of that has snowballed into that moment of just a couple of days ago, where I saw myself and I was like, oh my God, I didn't overcome this thing. I didn't do what I wanted to do or what I was expecting of myself or what my teacher was also telling me and inviting me, encouraging me to do the thing, and I didn't amount to it. And so I felt that snowball just plow right over me. And I felt all of the years of disappointment just drop right into my gut. And it was in the tapping, in the feeling of it, in the diving into it and tapping and just allowing myself to come face to face with that disappointment and cry and shake my body and just like feel it in my breath. It's in that work that is so important to just come face to face with those deep feelings of fear, of regret or resentment, right? That we can finally allow ourselves to feel what we have trapped within ourselves, what we have been suppressing for so long. And it's in the excavation of that we allow ourselves to be free finally. It's like that dragon that has seemed so demonic, maybe, we have been so afraid of, that we have caged into ourselves, right? And it is in the unlocking of that and finally setting it free and not let it hold us back anymore. And I'm sure that if you look to any aspiring entrepreneur that you have in your life, that you look up to, whose content you follow, you will hear in their stories that they share that they also feel the fear. They have also felt that disappointment. They've also gone through that failure some way or another. And what makes it so inspiring is not in the way that they allowed themselves to be taken down by the disappointment, by the fear, right? By failing, but the way in which they got back up, the way in which they overcame it, the way in which they let go and just set themselves free, push themselves beyond that wall, beyond that barrier, into the next level. Yeah? And that's what this is about, right? It's okay to feel like a failure. It's okay to be disappointed in yourself. It's okay to fucking be shaking in your boots, honey. You're going to feel the disappointment. You're going to feel the failure. You're going to feel the fear anyway. And there are practices that you can do. For me, what really helped me was doing emotional freedom technique. Yeah, and if there's a resource that you want, there's a particular app that I use that's amazing. I've got a link for it. If you'd like it, you're welcome to DM me. I'll definitely put it in the show notes as well, okay? But there are so many practices that we can turn to that helps us process these emotions, okay? Because it's one thing to acknowledge them, right? It's one thing to be like, oh my God, this is what I'm feeling. But until we actually go into the feeling and excavate the gems that are there for us to retrieve back, right? It's us taking our power back. But sometimes there's some muck and things and layers that we got to move through in order to get into the nuggets of power. There are certain things that you can do. Journaling can be one of them. Tapping can be another. Certain, let's say like somatic exercises are also a really great way to do that. But if you need some resources, if you need some help, or also if you want to be guided through some of these, we can work one-on-one together in that. Or, you know, there's so many different practices. It's like, okay, where do I go? What do I do? Oh my God, like send me a DM. Let's talk about it. You never know where this particular thing that is coming up for you is leading you towards. And it might've just been a simple DM contact with me and getting an idea. Sometimes I really lean in on my intuition with certain people, right? If you bring me disappointment, I might not recommend EFT tapping to you. I might guide you to something else that my intuition is say, hey, she really needs this right now. So even though you and I have both felt disappointment, like what worked for me may not work for you and vice versa. And that's totally okay. But the thing is, it's time to do it. It's time to face it. It's time to really dig into yourself, to really bring out the gold. Yeah. It's all a part of the alchemical process. Okay. And that's something that I have done for years now. And I'd love to help you in some way, shape, or form. Okay. So hit me up, send me a DM, and let's talk about it. Because your next breakthrough is literally on the other side of this breakdown that you may be avoiding. Okay. And I know the breakdowns can be so fucking hard. It's like, God, like this is like, why can't things just be easy? Right. But the thing is, the resistance, the resistance to the breakdown is what is actually making it so much fucking harder than it needs to be. Okay. But I know sometimes it can be scary, especially if you're new to this. And it's like, oh my God, this feels so big. I don't know how to handle this all myself. I can help you hold that space. I can help be there to be a space holder for you to be able to dive into that. Yeah. And sometimes it's actually not that deep of a dive, but you won't know until you try. And sometimes there's layers of it. Really, I'm sure without a doubt, there's layers of it. You just get to the first layer. And then months go by and it's like, oh my God, I thought I took care of this. No, there's a deeper layer. Oh my God, a year later, I thought I took care of, no, there's a deeper layer. There's even more of a lesson, of a medicine, of those nuggets of power, bigger nuggets of power that you have given away to that past that you are now ready to retrieve. Yeah. So anyway, if this was helpful, I actually really got to go. The event is going to begin very soon, and I'm just so excited. And thank you for listening. I'd love to hear how this was for you. And yes, hit me up on Instagram in the DMs. And for any resources, they're down in the description. And I love you so much. And thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I'm so excited to bring you even more. And I send you so much love. Take care.
Thank you so much for tuning in. May this podcast continue to activate the spiritually embodied leader within you. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to take a screenshot, share it on your stories, and tag me at embodiedfreedom.biz. If you'd like to express your appreciation, please rate the show and leave a review on iTunes. I'm looking forward to connecting again soon. Take care.